I was a D student in high school, and I scored bottom 30% of all intelligence tests. But how did I end up achieving top 10% of medicine, scoring top 0.1% of all students? Now in this video, I'll give you absolutely everything you need to know, so you can go from a failing or average student, or a burnt out A student, to a happy and perfectly balanced A student without wasting 15 years of your life like me finally working this out. Now you can study less and get better grades and have all the free time to do whatever you like without feeling guilty. But the thing is, you need to understand every single point that I'm about to share with you. The most important points are 7, 8 and 9, but you need 1 to 6 as a foundation to make 9 to work. Now if you actually go and apply everything I'm about to share with you, this might just be the last study video that you'll ever need to watch. Now secret number 1, beating procrastination once and for all. Now we all know that procrastination isn't our friend. Now at some point we've fallen victim to this enemy. Now you might be looking at the clock thinking it's 5:55 and at 6 o'clock you're going to be super productive and start that study or assignment. But you scroll on your phone a bit and then you realize it's already 6:15. Then you tell yourself at 6:30 I will become productive again. Then this loops continues on and you go into a full panic mode 1 or 2 days before the exam or due date of your assignment. You manage to barely cram all that knowledge into your brain or finally finish that assignment. You then think to yourself, what if I could have done this much earlier? Wouldn't I get so much done and don't need to go through this last minute panic every single time? Now you may even have googled how to beat procrastination. Then all of these articles and videos tell you different things that have never actually worked for you. Now in this section I'm going to talk about exactly why most procrastination tips don't work and what you should be focusing on instead. Now to understand this, you need to understand one basic rule in life, which is also observed time and time again in nature itself, which is the 80-20 rule. Now if you haven't heard of it before, basically it says that approximately 20% of our input yields 80% of our results. We will then spend the rest of our 80% of the time chasing that last tail 20% of the results. And we see this in nature as well. About 80% of this earth is in water and 20% is in land. And of the land that we live in, 80% of the population lives inside 20% of these cities. Or when you zoom into the roads, we also see most of the traffic is in 20% of the intersections, and most of the accidents are on those popular 20% intersections and roads. So knowing this is great, but you might ask, how does it help beating my procrastination? Now when you apply this 80-20 rule to all of the internet advice, that means that only a handful of websites and videos actually cover succinct points when it comes to beating procrastination, or to help you actually study more efficiently. Now having studied 15 years myself, 5 years in high school, 5 years undergraduate pharmacy school, and 5 years postgraduate medical school, I've come to realize most of the procrastination tips or study tips in general aren't helpful. And this is exactly what I want to do for you in this video, to distill all those potent 20% tips so you can just focus on these to get you these 80% of results so you can achieve much more in less time. So when it comes to beating procrastination, it boils down to just 4 keys. And for the advice that have worked for you in the past, it is probably because it has contained some or all of these 4 keys. Now beating procrastination is like trying to drive this nice car. There's this gas pedal that propels you forward, and there are these brakes that hold you back. Now 2 factors that drive you to do work are importance and urgency. And the 2 factors that actually stop you from doing work are fear and uncertainty. Now you need not just some, but all of these 4 factors to be at the right level before you're ever going to choose action over procrastination. Now this is a simple but powerful equation to understand human behavior, and most importantly, why aren't you getting off TikTok, YouTube and Instagram and finally doing some work that you know is good for you? Now let's take this for example. Let's say you ate a big meal and there is no importance or urgency for you to find food, so you're going to keep scrolling Instagram or watch Netflix on your sofa. Now let's say that you've been starved for 3 days. Now it is more important for you to seek food, and there is more urgency because you feel like you might die if you don't eat for any longer. But if you're stranded on the island and you know that there's this fierce lion in this jungle, your fear of dying is going to make you procrastinate and actually not take action if you don't have enough reason and urgency for food. And same with uncertainty. If you were starved for 3 days and stuck in the middle of the desert and you're uncertain which direction you should head for food, you still might choose procrastination over action. Now this is a little bit extreme, but when it comes to your study and assignments, it is the same. Now let's take completing an assignment for an example using this procrastination tool I've prepared for you. Now the specific task that you are avoiding might be your biology assignment, and if the assignment isn't worth much, like 1% of your final grades, your importance score will be low. And if it isn't due until 3 weeks later, your urgency score will also be low, and your total action score will still be low. Now usually we don't fear our assignments, but you can also have some uncertainty on how to complete this assignment, and this compiles on as your brakes to stop you from ever taking action. So the only real way to address this is to look at these 4 score factors and actually find out how you can move this action score from the red zone to the green zone so you're more likely to take action. And looking at importance, rather than just looking at this as 1% of your final score, can you make this about something that's important enough for you? Maybe it's to prove to your parents that you're doing well. Maybe it's a competition with your friends so you can get bragging rights when you achieve a high mark. Now, it needs to be important enough to you. Now, if you don't see these tasks as important enough, your action score will never be high enough in the green zone for you to take action. But what about urgency? What about setting an artificial earlier deadline? Now, sometimes it works well, but we all know that our brains aren't stupid. And what about incorporating some accountability? A very effective method that a lot of my students use is called the $100 challenge, where you get someone who will hold you accountable and not let you bend the rules. Now, it can be your close friends or parents, and give them this $100 or an amount that will hurt you if you lose it. Maybe it's a trip that you're saving for or a favorite gadget that you're about to buy. Give this amount to this accountability person and tell them you're going to finish this assignment in 2 days, even though your due date might be 2 weeks away. Now, if you can't finish it, they can keep this money you gave them. Now, trust me, it works if you do it, because all of a sudden, this task isn't just about the 1% final grades. It is now about your pride, not letting down the person that you look up to, and not losing the money that you're about to use on your favorite gadget or experience. All of a sudden, your importance and your urgency shoots up, and your action score is in the green zone. You may have some uncertainty, but you now have the drive to overcome this by breaking this task into small actionable steps and take a crack at it. Now, it works wonders every single time. So an actionable step you can take right now is to use this procrastination tool and use this $100 challenge to get you going. Make sure you pick someone that will actually make you accountable, preferably someone you look up to and you don't want to disappoint them. Now, try this and let me know how it worked out for you. Now, much like my student Jonah, who have joined the full program, and he is able to take on these tips and smash procrastination, he has also an important message to share with you.
Before I knew about your course, I was strolling on Facebook as I normally do, just wasting time. You always mentioned about how none of this stuff will work unless you do. It's hard to look at yourself and critically think of that you're the problem. You're right, because all of my subjects and stuff won't bump up a grade unless I actually do the work.
And secret number 2, unlocking unlimited study motivation. Now, first and foremost, we should know that study motivation is a myth. And we've probably all been there. We've watched a very well put together motivational video where you have this guy sweating in the gym or working overtime in their desk or in their side hustle, and you have this inspirational speaker yelling at you at the background, telling you you only have one life and telling you you need to work more, sleep less if you want that extraordinary life. Now, you feel that massive motivation inside of you. This video has successfully fired your urge up to work, and you tell yourself, I'm going to be different tomorrow. And tomorrow, when you wake up, you sit down and try to study and work on that project, you end up getting distracted. Now, 5 minutes in, you're scrolling in on TikTok, Instagram, and watching YouTube videos. Now, after riding that motivation high, you have huge expectations on yourself. You have even written out a to-do list that is too many things for you to complete. And at the end of the day, you know you haven't completed even one of these tasks because you just can't stop yourself from scrolling on social media. So we know that external motivation doesn't really work. Now, as cliche as it may sound, the only way to unlock unlimited study motivation is to look within. And I'm going to teach you exactly how you can do this in a moment. Now, when you think about it, the only reason that you're procrastination is just because you think this task is not important to you enough. So you know you don't need motivation to eat when you're starving. You know you don't need motivation to sleep when you've been sleep deprived for 1 week. You just do it. Now, as human beings, we've evolved to be as energy efficient as possible, meaning we won't move a muscle if that thing isn't important enough for us. Now, if you have just finished a big satisfying meal filled to the brim, you're now in bed comfy and warm and watching Netflix or scrolling on Instagram, you have absolutely no reason to eat, and it is highly unlikely for you to get up and prepare for another meal. Now, finding study motivation is like trying to watch a motivational video and trying to get yourself out from this very comfy state to try and cook another meal so you can stuff yourself up even more. And even if you want to vomit right now, it just doesn't work. Now, you know eating right now doesn't serve you, and you don't have the desire, and you don't have your why to do this. Now, you might think, enough rambling on, you've told me that motivation doesn't work. So what should I actually be focusing on if I keep procrastinating and never seem to be able to bring myself to study? Now, in the highest level of truth, there are only 2 things that drive human behavior, and that includes bringing yourself to study. Now, the first thing is purpose. Now, whenever we talk about purpose, people think it's something in the blurry future, and some doubt they will even find their purpose ever. But this is far from the truth. It's just that most people aren't consciously aware aware of this because our traditional schools and teachers never taught us how to find our true purpose. Now, your purpose is here and now, serving you day in and day out. You're probably just not consciously aware of this because your purpose takes place in the form of your hierarchy of highest values. Now, everyone walks around with a unique set of values, which are shaped from our upbringing, our past experience, and people you surround yourself with. Of your own values, there is a clear ranking order where the higher, more important value often wins. Now, every day you make hundreds or thousands of decisions. Now, should I study instead of scroll Instagram? Should I tell him the truth or just laugh it off and not hurt his feelings? Or should I eat fast food or make a healthy meal today? Now, you make these decisions based on your hierarchy of highest values. And you make these decisions on your thoughts, then leads to a series of actions which you will perform because you think this will yield the greatest amount of benefit to your own set of values. And it is very important that you understand your own set of values and how these values rank in terms of importance to you. Because if you truly never see how study will benefit your own hierarchy of highest values, no matter what you do, you will continue to procrastinate and not do well in school or university. But if you know how to link the importance of study and see how this will be one of the most efficient ways to fulfill your own highest values, then you will become this unstoppable machine and you have unlocked unlimited study motivation. So how do you find your own highest values? As I've said before, it's already in the here and now. You just need to learn how to consciously look out for them. The most practical way is to look at your own behavior, what you spend most of your time doing, what you spend most of your time thinking, what you spend most of your money buying, what object occupies your space most of your time. For example, your phone is likely an object that occupies most of your time and space, but everyone uses this for a different reason. Superficially, you might think you're using this to connect with friends and check how they're doing. But when you ask yourself why you'd like to check them out and what they're doing, there's often a deeper reason. It might be because you want to see how their life compares to yours. And when you ask yourself, why do you want to compare their lives to yours? There may be yet another deeper reason, that you want to show others, get approval from others, or acknowledgement that you are living a better life. It might be in the form of the latest gadgets that you're showing off, the most recent holiday that you've been, or the latest achievements that you have made. Now, when you ask yourself why yet again, it might relate to you wanting to have this sense of pride or a desire to be at a level above others. Now, it can be in the form of physical belongings, social status, or personal achievements, or when summarized deeper, relating to an ultimate sin that is called pride. Now, there are 7 big sin categories in total, but pride is the most common one and also manifested in many forms in life. Now, you can choose to be a minimalist. That is a form of pride, one level higher than other people, because you have this sense that you don't need anything. You're physically not materialistic, but this principle of having less is more still relates to pride. Now, when I talk about these sins, I don't mean that you will suffer and burn in eternal flames when you die if you have these, but I mean that this is a big trait inside of you, and if you don't understand or accept it well, it will bring a metaphorical hell for you on earth. Like if you're not able to control your pride properly and you go around saying, hey, look at me, I'm so good, it won't go very well with building relationships and having a successful career in the future. But if you're able to use this pride to your advantage, for example, seeing results as a game and having friendly competitions with your friends, once you achieve these results or get into your dream career, you know internally that you're at this higher status amongst your friends without the need of ever boasting. Now, this way you can slowly shift from comparing yourself to others to comparing to yourself and what you have achieved previously, internalizing this pride and focusing on achieving much more in every single area of your life. This way, when others after you get inspired of your achievements, they will come and seek for your wisdom, and in turn you can help them out, which then in turn feeds your own pride. Now, as you can see, this positive loop then pushes you to become a better person each day, striving for excellence and helping others along the way. And this way of satisfying your pride is at a completely different level, where you walk around one-upping everyone and putting everyone else down to raise your own status. Now, relating back to your own highest values, pride is in every single one of us, and it drives us in a different way. Now, for example, people who are wanting to get into medicine in high school don't place focus on the fact that they need to study. They think about prestige, acknowledgement from friends, and approval from family, which ultimately links back to their pride. They feel that studying hard and getting these good grades is the most efficient way of fulfilling their pride. Now, they know that they will get this bragging rights when they finally achieve their goals. Now, I believe having pride is key to success, and it's a trait that's in every single one of us. Our society tells us not to be prideful because it's seen as a negative thing. But as you can see, pride can also be used positively. We just need to learn how to cultivate it so it becomes this positive internalized pride where we eventually strive to compare against our own self, evolving to be our best self and helping others along the way. Now, finding a way to infinitely magnifying your current pride is key to unlock your own self-sufficient study motivation. Now, this allows you to run the study and learning marathon to tackle the exams on a long run. On to the second thing that drives human behavior, including bringing yourself to study, which is our habits. Now, we've already talked about how your purpose, your hierarchy of highest values, influence your thoughts, which translates to your action. And these series of actions performed every single day is our habits. And once we establish our habits, it takes only a small amount of effort to keep these habits going on, because we go into this autopilot mode. Once you establish these habits, it actually takes more energy for you not to perform these old habits. But the scary thing is that people aren't aware that their current habits, and they continue to do the same thing day in and day out, not realizing that these habits aren't serving them and not leading them closer to the goals that they want in life. Now, you have to understand, input times time equals results. The input in this equation is your daily habits, and if you continue the same habits over time, it will yield the same results. So if you're currently not getting the grades you want, or if you're already achieving good grades but you want to have more free time to do what you like, then your input needs to change. So here is an actionable step and some questions to think about. So getting excellent grades come down to only 3 factors. So this is your input. Number 1 is time efficiency. Number 2 is study efficiency. And number 3 is exam efficiency. Now, my question to you is, have you thought of ways of improving your time efficiency? Thinking how you can achieve more in the same hour as other people? How can you find ways of staying focused or achieve flow state for a longer period of time? Now, secondly, with study efficiency, how are you able to consume material more efficiently? How can you improve your memory so you can retain much more for the exams in less time? And I'll prove to you that you can 2x or even 3x your memory in our next section. And thirdly, how do you improve your exam efficiency so you can perform better in your exams? Now, have you perfected your exam routine and exam techniques? All of these can be incremental 1% changes to your input, which over time will yield a greater output. I truly believe those who continue to work hard to improve themselves will overtake even the smartest, most talented people who never bothered to improve themselves because they think they are smart. And I'll prove this to you just with your memory in the next section just in a moment. And much like my student Zach, who have joined my full program and got a 4.0 GPA, working hard and implementing these to their own routines.
It was like a little transformation that happened with me. I took your course kind of just over the summer. And after I kind of sat down, I was like, okay, like this whole medicine thing seems really cool. But like I looked at my GPA, it wasn't looking, and I didn't think I was going to get 4.0 for the rest of my university career. But now I do think that's possible. And I've done that for half of that so far. So I did that for the last 2 semesters. And not just that, like the percentage numbers are like stupid high.
And on to secret number 3, increasing your memory by 200%. Now in this section, if I do a good job, you will improve your memory by 2 to 3 times now over the course of the next 20 minutes. Now we've all been there. You walk into a room and 3 people just introduce themselves to you. And just 5 minutes after they've introduced themselves to you, you think to yourself, oh crap, what was his name again? Or you swear you remember that you've read about this topic just yesterday, but today it has totally escaped your brain. When you want to put it on the test paper or to explain to your friend, the most common and frustrating phrase we use is, I forgot. Now believe it or not, you already have a very good memory. The common problem is not everyone is using their memory properly. The people that are having troubles with their memory aren't speaking the language of your mind. Like if you're trying to speak English to someone who only speaks Italian, you would think that they don't understand you at all. Likewise, that Italian guy doesn't know what the heck you're talking about either. So you need to be speaking the same language as your mind to make use of its enormous power. And yes, that's right inside of you at this moment. You just need to learn the right way to make your mind memorize the things you want. And there are 3 keys I want you to memorize information better, which I call the HILE method, Dr. Hugo's image, location, emotion system. And I will talk about imagery first. Now imagine your mind like a supercomputer with terabytes upon terabytes of storage. Every second, your environment will feed you information and it will be stored. Believe it or not, everything that you have seen, heard, felt, tasted, and experienced is stored right inside your mind. As you receive this information passively, these files will be stored in your hard drive at a random location with a random file name. You will have trouble retrieving this because when you look into this computer, you don't know which folder you're looking into. You can't even use the search function either because the file name is stored at random as well. But if these files are organized properly, it makes finding them and recalling them effortlessly later. Now words and writing don't work well. That's why you can read a sentence 10 times out loud and you'll forget it in an hour. Just like you're speaking English to this Italian guy. Except the Italian guy is your mind and your mind won't understand you. And you need to speak Italian to the Italian guy and your mind speaks in the language of imagery. But what if I tell you now, whatever you do, do not think of a pink elephant. And what did you just think about? A pink elephant. Even if you try not to think in images, you will think in images. The second key is emotion. We naturally remember things that are emotional to us. Now, people don't forget their first major accident. They don't forget their first breakup. When did it happen? How did it happen? They remember it all. And I'll now show you, just by using these 2 of the 3 keys alone from this HIO method, is sufficient to increase your memory by 200%. Now, take a moment now to clear your workspace, clear your mind. I wish to ask for your absolute concentration for the next 10 minutes. Now, first, we need to have a good baseline on how good or bad your memory is right now. In a moment, I'll be reading out a list of 20 words, each with 3 seconds in between. I want you to remember just with your mind. Don't write anything down. There is also no point cheating because you won't learn this method properly. So let's get right to it. And number 1 is chocolate. Number 2 is horse. Number 3 is Mount Everest. Number 4 is elephant. Number 5 is microwave. Number 6 is remote control helicopter. Number 7 is inflatable pool. Number 8 is bathtub. Number 9 is Japanese flag. Number 10 is fountain pen. Number 11 is bull ant. Number 12 is tile. Number 13 is orange juice. Number 14 is earphones. Number 15 is printer. Number 16 is 3 books. Number 17 is oak tree. Number 18 is double-decker bus. Number 19 is bridge. Number 20 is peacock. So welcome back. Now take 2 minutes and write down in order what you've remembered, and we'll resume just in 2 minutes. Now welcome back. So how did you do? Now compare the list here and see how many of these you got right. Now remember, you need to have both the number and the object right to get one right. For example, if you wrote down peacock as your first one, it's wrong. Now note this number down as your baseline, and I'm now going to take you through this HIO method to 2x your memory. And in a moment, I'm going to dim the screen. There'll be nothing on the screen. I just want you to close your eyes and just focus. So as you are out on your backyard in the field, you're holding this block of giant block of chocolate. It's bigger than your head. It's bigger than both your arms can carry. It's very heavy. And it's very hot outside, so the chocolate's actually melting all over the place, and it's dripping onto your nose. You can taste it in your mouth. It's dripping on your feet. It's everywhere, and the smell of this chocolate actually attracted this animal over, and this animal is a big horse. It came so close to you as you're holding this chocolate. It came so close to your face. It's breathing into your face, and you can feel that moisture and that smell from that horse's nose and mouth. And having this giant horse coming up so closely, you feel really scared. You feel that you need to do something, so you didn't think, you just acted, and you chucked this big block of melting chocolate right into this horse's face. And the horse got so angry, it turned its back on you immediately, and you saw its tail wagging, and you saw it lift its hind leg up, and it kicked you so hard and it thrusted you so hard that you landed in someplace very cold, and you realized that you were on the top of Mount Everest. And as you were lying there, it was cold, but you looked up. You were a bit dazed, but you looked up and you see this big trunk coming down. And you see a giant big elephant that just saw you and was about to stomp onto you. Just as this moment, you realize that you've got superpowers, and you use your superpowers to make this giant big elephant into a micro-sized elephant. And just to the right hand side, out of nowhere, you realize that there is a microwave. So you decide to put this micro-sized elephant into this microwave. After you do this, you realize that you are trapped in Mount Everest. The air is very thin, you're struggling to breathe, you're hungry and you want to leave. And you reach in and feel your left pocket. And there you pull out a remote control helicopter. As you pulled it out, the remote control helicopter grew in size. It grew and grew and grew, so it's big enough to actually carry your weight. So you use this remote control helicopter to leave Mount Everest, to fly you to one of the base camps on Mount Everest. So as you were flying, it took about 5 to 10 minutes. You were flying through the air and you were about to reach this base camp. And just out of the distance, when you were about to land, you saw this big giant inflatable pool. It's all frozen because it's Mount Everest, and people were actually ice skating on top of it. There was a lot of people there, and you don't want to land there because you will hurt a lot of people. So you wanted to just fly over this pool, and over the pool you just saw this very nice, hot, steamy bathtub waiting for you to just drop in and have a nice bath to get that coldness out of you. And as you were there, you feel that hot water and warm water and you feel clean. So you finish your bath and you stood up and you were dripping in water and you wanted something to dry yourself. And just at this moment, you saw this Asian guy coming across. He was a Japanese person actually handing you a towel. And when you looked at this towel, it's no ordinary towel. It actually mostly white, and there's a big red dot in the middle, which is the Japanese flag. So the towel was a Japanese flag, which is number 9. And as you were drying yourself, you actually looked to your side, to the right hand side, and you actually see a big structure. It was a fountain structure. You first looked at it, it's not just any water fountain. It was a fountain, and in the middle of it, it was shaped like a pen with ink sprinkling all over, and it actually sprinkled so much that it dropped some on your face as well, and some black ink on your face, which is a fountain pen, which is number 10. And welcome back. Just take 1 minute now to jot down the first 10 objects that we just went through. Let's go now. And welcome back. How many did you get? Now, if you got 3 correct initially, now you got 9 correct in the story, it means that you have 3 extra memory. And if you have 5 correct initially, and now you got 10 right, that means you have 2 extra memory. And remember, because of time constraint, we only did this for the first 10 objects. Imagine how many more you could get if we spent a little more time and wrote an emotionally striking story to the last 10 objects. Our actionable challenge would be, after this webinar, to complete the rest of the 10 objects using the method you just learned. Tell us how much you improved compared to when you first started. If you're like so many of my students, you can see an average of at least 200% improvement if you put in the effort and create this emotionally striking story. And also, much like Oscar, after joining our full program, he is able to surprise his parents using this method to memorize all 45 United States presidents.
6 months before I signed up, I actually discovered this whole thing. I saw this ad on Instagram and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then it kind of sat in the back of my mind back in when I was doing GCSEs, and now I'm doing A-levels, and A-levels are much tougher than GCSEs. I'm like, okay, no, something's got to change. I was actually really scared telling my parents. I didn't want them to know that I was struggling enough to seek deeper help. Yeah, well, they've definitely noticed that I'm a lot more head on with my studies. When I first went down to tell them to name a number from 1 to 45, they were like, it's like you're cheating, you know? I didn't want to explain them the method straight away. You know, it's not fair. I paid for the course, you know, they should pay too, you know? That's why I'm so happy with this course. It's just there's so many, from all the different angles, I've just got the advantage now, I feel.
And on to secret number 4, having laser focus and eliminate distractions. Now, a lot of students want better focus and to be less distracted. And some of the core reasons why you're distracted have already been discussed in a section about beating procrastination and unlocking unlimited study motivation. Now, if you truly understand the 4 factors that causes you to procrastinate, and you have done that exercise to find your own why, and you've found your own unique hierarchy of highest values, you're much more likely to have better focus when it comes to your studies. But I get it, we are all mortal human beings, and there are good days and bad days. So here, I want to talk more about some practical tips to help you increase your focus and become less distracted. And this is broadly separated into 2 categories. One is the short-term tactic, providing you with quick hacks to win the day. And the second is long-term tactics, providing you with a sustainable way for you to keep up with this sharp focus day in, day out indefinitely. Now first, let's talk about the short-term tactics. And these are some quick hacks you can use to immediately jumpstart you from being distracted and procrastinating back to this productive working mode. Now there are two broad ways to do this. First is increasing the friction of distraction, and a second is to reduce the friction of working. Now first, increasing the friction of distraction, basically meaning to deliberately make it harder for you to reach out for those distractions. For example, locking your phone away in a drawer that's in another bedroom, or use apps like Forest that locks out all your social media when you commit to start working. This means that it takes extra steps for you to get started on that social media rampage. Now often it only starts with just one post, one like, one comment, then it turns into a second video, and then it turns into a full-on Netflix binge. Now when you are able to increase your friction of the distractions, you give yourself a chance to think whether you want to consciously choose to become distracted, or you might end up continuing this task on hand because it's easier to do this than to jump over 10 hoops to reach your phone in the next room. Now second practical tips is to decrease the friction of productive work. Now in essence, it means to make the task for you to complete much easier than it seems to be. Often when we want to study for a particular subject or to start a particular assignment, it seems to be this mammoth of a task. Whenever you want to sit down and start it, it then generates fear and uncertainty. As we have talked about in this beating procrastination section, you then are more likely to turn to these easy distractions and to seek comfort from this fear and uncertainty. Now let's take running for example. Now I'm not much of a runner myself, but if you were to tell me to run a 5-kilometer run right now, that would generate a lot of friction, and it is highly unlikely, no matter how much you tell me or I think this is beneficial to me, I won't go and do this run. But if I'm able to break this down to much more simple steps, for example, step 1, stand up from my seated chair, step 2, change into my athletic clothes, then step 3, put on my running shoes, and even if I stop here, I'd say I made a start already. But the fact that I've put on my running shoes now, it makes it much easier for me to step out of my door and run the first 100 meters. Then after I ran this 100 meters, I'm more likely to run the next 100 meter as opposed to stopping and going home at this point. Much like any other habits, this would then take time for me to slowly build up to 5 kilometers a day. The first day, it might be getting out of this chair, changing to my athletic clothes, putting on those shoes, and getting out of my house and running 200 meters. You should then be proud of yourself for doing this because it makes it much more likely and satisfying that you will actually do it the next day. And this is the same with all our study and assignments. Whenever we have this 2,000 word essay, we often find it very overwhelming and don't even know where to begin. But if you break it down into simple steps, first step maybe putting your phone away, second step opening up the assignment requirements, and third step looking up the marking guide and see how the marks are distributed. Then step 4, looking at the word requirements and planning how many words in each section approximately. And each and every single one of these tasks probably will only take you a couple of minutes. And when you break it down into a checklist, it feels very rewarding that you continue to plow through the checklist. And by the end of the day, you'll be surprised that you've kept this momentum going. So in essence, combining these two short-term tactics of increasing friction to access your distractions and to reduce your friction for doing productive work will give you a much greater chance at remaining focused and become less distracted when it comes to your study or assignments. So those are the short-term tactics to help you increase your focus and become less distracted. But the most important part is to make sure that you are able to do this sustainably, because we know that studying and preparing for exams is more like a marathon than an explosive 100-meter sprint. By sustainability, I mean how you can increase your personal performance and optimize your energy levels so you can continue to have a sharp and clear mind to continue to implement these short-term tactics. And there are so many things I can talk about, including your diet, your exercise, your mindset, your daily routines, but one of the most important things that I wish to talk about is your sleep. Now, in order to optimize your personal performance throughout the day, you need to have a basic understanding that we each have our own sleep cycles. Now, as we fall asleep, we go through deeper and deeper sleeping stages. And when we wake up at the wrong time in midst of these very deep sleeping stages, we end up feeling very groggy and our brain fogs for the rest of the day. But when you sleep for about 60 to 90 minutes, you slowly come back from these deep sleeping stages to a lighter sleeping stage called the REM sleep. Now, according to the Sleep Foundation, REM sleep is believed to be essential to cognitive functions like memory, learning, and creativity. Basically, it's your brain trying to consolidate all the learnings you have throughout the day while you're rejuvenating and recharging your energy at the same time. When I first learned about the sleep cycles, I experimented the amount of energy I would get depending on the number of hours I would sleep that day. For example, I tried sleeping 8 hours and I felt groggy, but when I moved this to 7.5 hours, I felt energized for the day again. Then when I moved this back yet again 7 hours of sleep, I felt groggy again. Then the next move was to 6 hours where I felt energized for the whole day again. Then I repeated this experiment until I found that my sleep cycle was about 1.5 hours. So for each increment for 1.5 hours, I feel energized. So at 1.5, 3 hours, 4.5, 6 hours, 7.5, and 9 hours, I felt refreshed. The thing is, no matter if I sleep for 6 hours, 7.5 hours, or 9 hours, I find that I still get that late afternoon dip around 3 to 4 p.m. So a neuroscientist, Laura Lewis of Boston University, have come up with a study showing that during this phase of deep sleep, our brain has double amount of cerebrospinal fluid flowing into our brain, basically flushing the brain cells or neurons and taking away these toxins that can potentially accumulate and associate with things like Alzheimer's disease. So knowing the importance of having multiple deep sleep cycles, I elected to pick the 6-hour mark, so there are enough deep sleeping stages for my brain to flush out these toxins and take out this brain garbage, and have a very clear mind and be energized all throughout the day until 4 p.m. Then from 4 p.m. I would sleep for 1.5 hours, which is another full sleep cycle. Then from 5:30 yet again, I would have a clear mind and full of energy until at least 1 or 2 a.m. Compared to someone sleeping 7.5 hours at night, my sleep time is just the same, but I've broken it down to a 6-hour long sleep and a 1.5 hour recharge. And I find this is quite good because I know I'm naturally energized throughout the day without needing any coffee or energy drinks. And when I finally do this 1.5 hour strategic nap, I know this I have completed a full sleep cycle and have consolidated my memory for the day and refreshed my body, ready to tackle the second half of the day naturally without any coffee or energy drinks. Now just making this simple adjustment have changed my life since then, and having better grasp and control of my own personal performance and energy while having an ongoing sustainable way of maintaining this high level of energy indefinitely. So actionable point would be, whenever you want to have better focus, find one way to make it harder for you to access your distractions, for example putting away your phone, and find one way to make it easier for you to start doing productive work, like breaking your task down into simple 1 to 2 minute baby steps and just working on 1 or 2 of these baby steps to begin with. Also try to experiment with your own sleep cycle. Now, have you tried different sleeping durations, and how does it make your difference to your own energy levels throughout the day? And have you tried a biphasic sleep cycle like me? Have you tried ways of increasing your sleep quality? And if you haven't tried already, try to look up sleep hygiene and implement these tips to your own sleep routine. Like my student Adiola, who have joined our full program, committed to make this work for her, and now she is much more confident and teaching her own siblings on how to study smarter and more efficiently.
Program helped me just get things done immediately, and I'm so happy that I joined. Like, honestly, you have no idea how much your program has really helped me. Like, I just started the second semester and I've seen huge changes. I've been able to retain lots of information, and now I can talk to my siblings about it and they can do better in their studies also, which is just amazing. And this is just the first week of the second semester and I'm feeling so confident, and like right now, and like I wake up when I'm supposed to. I don't feel tired during the day. I feel relaxed, and I feel ready for the next day. You changed everything. Honestly, I woke up and I was like, wow, I feel so refreshed. I feel so like my mindset, I felt so strong. It's like nothing can bring down that energy that I was feeling, and it's just awesome.
And on to secret number 5, maximum study efficiency and potent time management. Now we all have the notion that we want to study smarter and not harder. And the key to doing this is to study more efficiently and have more output each hour than most of the other students that are sitting the same exam as you are. But without getting properly taught on how to study efficiently, we fall into the traditional traps of doing the exact opposite, which is studying hard but not getting the results you want, or studying hard getting the results you want but sacrificing all your free time, your social life, and your sleep. But if you're allow me to explain to you just one simple concept, it might just change your mind on how some students can study minimally but still get great results. And let me tell you, it's not about how smart they were born, but it's how smart they choose to use each hour of their time. So to achieve more in less time, you've got to understand the difference between working hard versus working efficiently. Now this is one of the biggest keys to achieving great results with minimum efforts. Now in order to do that, you need to understand that every study hour isn't utilized the same by students, and everyone falls into a study efficiency curve, or SEC. Now first, you have the warm-up zone. Typically, it takes 20 to 30 minutes for you to reach your maximum efficiency. Now imagine you're just warming up and a text message just comes in, or if you scroll Instagram for 1 minute. Now you end up having to start in this warm-up zone all over again, and you're not able to truly get into the zone. So the first 30 minutes, I might be doing 1x amount of work, but the next 30 minutes at maximum efficiency, I'll be doing 3x amount of work than the warm-up zone. So in 1 hour, I've done 4x as other people people has achieved. Whereas someone may spend 30 minutes to study achieve 1x, then get distracted by a message or YouTube video for 5 minutes, then restarting at warm-up zone and do another 30 minutes and achieve 1x. And in the same period of time, I was able to achieve 2x more than this other person. So better results, less efforts. So as you get into the productivity zone, you will notice that you start to lose focus of time and your environment around you. You're fully focused on the task on hand, and you're now in the efficiency zone, or some people call it the flow state. And this is where you want to stay as long as possible. Now, do not get distracted by any other things, otherwise you will end up warming up again. And as you work for the next 30 to 60 minutes, you'll notice your thoughts and your environment, sounds and conversations around you becoming more and more apparent. This means that you're reaching the burnout zone. You've got to understand, the human mind is not designed to stay in focus for hours and hours on end. Even surgeons need to take breaks if the surgery goes on for too long. Now, everyone is different, and you need to establish what this curve looks like for you. And your time in the warm-up zone may vary, how long you can stay in this peak performance zone may vary, and also the actual height of your study efficiency curve can vary as well, according to your environment, your peak energy, and even more importantly, your study methods. So an actionable point would be you need to start taking part in trial and error as much as possible and as soon as possible to maximize this height and duration of your peak performance zone. So for example, I find an increase in focus when I constantly change up my study environment, for example, going to the library, going to a cafe, etc. And also find a decrease in performance when I have music in the background. Now these fine details will then make a big difference when it's all compounded together over time. Now just like my student Ethan, who has joined the full program and has applied this to his own studies and getting now 90% plus average in all of his studies.
Definitely do it. It's awesome. Like, I have definitely been able to feel more efficient with my study at the moment. Like, I had exams that I thought were going to be really difficult, but with your study techniques, I started applying them and it actually really helps.
Now this nicely leads on to our next section, which is how to stop yourself from cramming. Now we've all been there. We've had the whole semester to study, but now I only have a couple of days to cram in everything that I had all year to learn. You've even been pulling all-nighters, drinking multiple coffees, energy drinks, and at this state your body is practically running on adrenaline. Now you remember how painful it is and how much you regret leaving all of this to last minute. Now you've promised yourself never to do this again, but this time next year you find yourself in this endless suffering loop all over again. So how do we stop ourselves from cramming and rescue ourselves from this loop of endless suffering? Now if you understood the study efficiency curve SEC, you should now understand why crammers tend to achieve much less than those who study regularly. Take an example for a student cramming right before exams, forcing themselves to do 6 hours of study in the library before they go home. After the productivity zone, their productivity or their study output completely tails off. Now during the final 4 hours of their study, their brains are foggy, they're tired, and they're burnt out. So effectively, for the 6 hours input, they probably only have done 2 hours in total. At the end of the day, they'll feel tired and drained because of this full-on study session. But in the end, they know that nothing much productive has really happened. But for someone who is studying regularly, they're able to fit in so many of these productive zones or flow states where they're able to achieve 2 to 3 times more than in the warm-up zone or the burnout zone. Now, if you truly understand this, my question to you is, why do you want to be so inefficient, giving yourself so much stress when exam time comes, and you know you'll be achieving so much less than you've spread out the workload throughout the year? Now the onus now is on you to take on this new identity, because some people take this as a badge of honor and tell themselves, yeah, this is who I am, I'm a crammer, and I'll leave everything to the last minute. Once you identify yourself as a crammer and you leave everything to the last minute, this is who you'll become. And this is where all the stresses, frustration, and suffering that accompanies this identity. But whereas if you choose to have this identity shift, that you're now a regular studier, fitting in just 2 to 3 hours study every day, this is where you choose the perks of being stress-free, frustration-free, and suffering-free that accompanies this identity. Now no one can force you to make this change, but now if you understand theoretically, mathematically, why it is so much more beneficial to be a regular studier than a crammer. So a quick actionable point: it is now your choice to identify as a regular studier and make the commitment to maybe even start off with setting a daily alarm for 30 minutes a day starting from tomorrow. Now the choice is yours to make, and this positive effect compounds over time as you establish this new habit and take up this new identity of a regular studier. Just like my student Tamara, who have joined my full program, she chose this identity differently and having much more confidence in taking action to change her habits for the better.
Mainly for me, it's a lot more confidence in my ability to change my study habits, because I've always kind of been like, oh well, this is just how I'm wired, it's like I can't change it. but like actually going through some of the modules, and when I was like listening to your webinar to begin with, I was like, oh, okay, like it is a habit just like anything else, like biting your nails. Like you can change it.
Yeah.
You just need to like put in the work and actually identify what the issue is.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'd say definitely, like if people are kind of stuck and need that helping hand, like go for it. Like it's honestly, it's helped me so much. And even just this 30-minute session like has actually given me motivation, and it's given me hope that I can change it, because like I really do want to excel in my studies. For me, I'd say if anyone's looking to go in and like get help from you, like get on it as soon as possible. Like late into the degree like I did. I start off on the right foot, and like you'll just be smooth sailing from there.
So on to secret number 7, how to write the perfect notes. Now I've lost count on how many times I've been asked by students, what is the best way to take notes? It's almost like as students we're tasked on this quest to find the best note-taking method. And once we find this legendary note-taking method, we'll immediately get those good grades. And once you use this note-taking method, you'll crack this ultimate hack of studying. But let me stop you right there, and let's take one step back. When we actually think about it, what actually are exams? What are we actually required to do to score marks in an exam? Our exams simply test our ability to recall information from our brain and put these into correct keywords, phrases, and sentences onto that exam paper. Now, if you just take one keyword from the sentence, what would it be? I'd say is the word recall. And this is essentially the 20% of input you should be focusing on. That would yield the 80% of the results when it comes to your exams. So we now agree that we're trying to optimize your thoughts, behaviors, and actions and the habits to maximize recall. So we need to objectively evaluate how effective it is when you spend a lot of time making these beautiful notes. When you're making notes, like most students, you're most likely either transcribing what the lecturer is saying, or you're copying from lecture slides, textbooks, or other resources. Especially if you're making these very beautiful notes that gets a lot of likes on Instagram. I really love this aesthetically, but boy, this is one of the most time consuming and inefficient study methods. A simple test that you can do is after handwriting or typing up these notes, close off everything and you only have this blank sheet of paper, or open up a blank Word document in front of you. Start to type or write how much you actually remember for the past hour. If you're like most students that I got them to do this experiment, you would notice that you're lucky to even get 5 or 10% of the learned material back onto this blank sheet of paper. And this is not new information. We know this according to the learning pyramid. And what most students do when they're making notes or compiling information is what we call passive study, which equates to the most inefficient part of this learning pyramid on how much we can retain per hour. When you make notes, it's most similar to just listening to a lecture or reading textbooks. And this is why you're most likely getting just 5 to 10% of the material sticking to your brain after this 1 hour study session. Now, at the moment you might ask, great, does it mean that I don't need to take notes at all? Now, there's some truth to this, and I know a lot of med school friends that take 0 notes and still do very well because they understand the principle of active learning and active recall. Basically writing themselves a list of exam questions as they attend the lecture and keep on repeating answering these questions until the exams. Now, this is one of the most extreme ways to exploit the learning pyramid, so you're constantly practicing by doing, and when you're having this blank sheet of paper in front of you, it means that you're essentially having to teach this concept to yourself each and every single time you're answering these questions. Now, this is why these students can retain 90 to 95% plus of the information within the same hours as compared to students who make these beautiful notes but only retain 5 to 10%. This is almost a 10 times difference in the efficiency and the ability to recall information. And when compounded day in and day out, these students that focus on active recall will study way more efficiently, need much less time, but they can achieve much better results than those who are using the wrong study methods like I was in high school myself. But I believe that this is a little extreme not to take any notes at all. Now, throughout the years, I've evolved to take less and less notes. And instead of transcribing what the lecturers have to say, I now focus on building a library of resources, links, images, videos that I can quickly refer to when I get stuck after my active recall session. Now, the last thing you want to do when you're revising for these mock exam questions is to then return to 100 different lectures, 20 different textbooks, 50 different online articles, 80 different YouTube videos to get the concept or fact into your brain once again. And now look at this making notes process more as a point of organization or quick reference. I've even taken this one step further to outsource my note-taking process. Instead of creating this library of organization myself from scratch, I'll start off from previous high-achieving students from the same subject and using their organized notes as a starting point. I'll then reorganize these notes to make sure I can quickly find information I need whenever I come to review concepts I don't understand during my daily active recall sessions. Now, this way I can focus on what's most important, which is the testing and active recall part. But if you're like like the old me with some OCD and some trust issues with other students that you want to make notes yourself, then I suggest you to take on the Cornell note-taking method during the lectures. Basically separating your page into 3 main sections. Section 1 is where you take your normal notes as main points, bullet points, and diagrams, and then section 2 is where you write your cues, meaning your main ideas, concepts, and more importantly, anticipated exam questions that will come up, so you can use during your active recall session, and you can compile this in one main Word or Excel document for all of the lectures. Then in section 3, you have a summary section, so immediately after your lecture, you get yourself to summarize as much information as possible, so it forces you to have an immediate active recall session, so you know which areas you need to look into right away and note this down. Now this is probably one of the most efficient ways that you can take advantage of writing notes to focus your attention during class, but also not lose sight of what is most important, which is having these anticipated exam questions to test yourself and to force yourself to summarize without looking at any notes after the lecture. Because active recall is the only way to put the most amount of information into your brain in the shortest period of time. Now when you first start to do this, you'll feel like it takes up a long time, but trust me, the harder you work your brain, the more information you will retain. So an actionable point would be to decide whether you want to adopt this process of outsourcing your notes by obtaining past high achievers notes, or look to take up this Cornell note-taking method as your go-to note-taking method for now. And on to secret number 8. The ultimate study planning guide, knowing precisely what you need to study. Now you know a little bit about what you need to do in terms of note-taking during the lecture and immediately after the lecture to active recall. Now it makes a little bit of sense to talk out exactly what you need to do every single day to maximize your study efficiency. But before we talk about exactly how you should be studying, you first need to take a step back and precisely understand what you need to study in the first place. Otherwise you fall into this trap of training, working extra hard to run backwards, but when you turn up on the day of the race, you find that everyone else is running forwards but yourself. The universe doesn't reward people working hard blindly. And if you're like me back in high school, I've experienced just this. I had been studying day in and day out using the most inefficient study methods, including spending the majority of my time making and organizing these beautiful notes, but never getting the time to actually consume and teach myself the information that's actually on these pages of notes. And back then, I was studying 10 to 12 hours each day, but I was still achieving only C's and D's on my report card. And not only that, I was unhappy because I was losing sleep, I was losing my social life, and I never had the time to do anything that was fun for me. And despite making all of these sacrifices, my grades were still really bad, and I got to the point that I thought I was genuinely dumb, and I thought I would not amount to anything in my life at all. But luckily, in my final year of high school, I met a new group of friends who were studying smart, who were having excellent grades, but also all the time they had to watch all their favorite movies, go out with friends, and have stable long-term relationships. And I told myself, this is the person that I want to be. And I started to analyze them, and I realized they are actually just like me. They're not born exceptionally smart, but they are an absolute genius when it comes to using each and every single hour of their study time efficiently. And the one major part of this is knowing precisely what you need to study, and I'll cover this right now. So to precisely know what you need to study, you need to have this principle of having the end in mind. The end meaning your goal. Now, if your goal is currently to get excellent grades, it makes sense to know who are the people that are actually giving you these grades. Now for high school, national or state exams, there's usually an exam board that sets up their curriculum. And if you're like me doing Cambridge International Examinations back in high school, you can easily search up each course and they have a detailed course curriculum with detailed learning objectives on what specifically you need to know. And they practically cannot deviate from this because all the teachers across the country teaches according to this curriculum. And this is the problem, placing the emphasis all on your teachers. They have the job of trying to teach 30 or 40 students in each class, each with their own learning style. And if you're unlucky that your learning style doesn't match your teacher's teaching style, then you would think that your teacher absolutely sucks and you might even give up on that subject. But even if your learning style matches your teacher's teaching style, sometimes your teacher may miss one or two of these specific learning objectives, or they may go on some tangents teaching you things that are not even in the curriculum. So you can spend days trying to study things that aren't even on the curriculum. Or you might use all your energy to study everything your teacher taught, but you still end up getting the surprise question exam just because you haven't bothered to find all the possible learning objectives that can come up in the exam. This then can slightly change when it comes to university. Yes, university courses are still monitored by the exam board, but a lot of times it's only one or a handful of lecturers that actually sets your final exam questions. And using the principle of having the end in mind, it makes sense to ask your lecturers whether they have a syllabus or a specific learning objective for each lecture. Now if they don't, then you need to start making and deriving writing your own according to each lecture that you get taught. So an actionable step that you can do is to have your whole course scoped out into one single document. And if you're lucky like me, when I was doing high school, Cambridge international exams, AS, A-levels, you can simply list all of these specific learning objectives onto an Excel spreadsheet. But if you don't have these specific learning objectives, like in university, you could try to reach out to your lecturer to obtain this. Just because it isn't publicly available doesn't mean that it isn't available at all. Remember that if you don't ask, you will never get. But if your lecturer tells you to kindly go away, then you'll need to try your best using the Cornell method that we talked about, listing 5 to 10 important questions or learning objectives for each lecture. Now, this subject scoping is one of the most essential steps for you to set yourself up for success and a basis for you to be able to use your time very efficiently, which I'll cover in the next section. Like Gerald, who have joined our full course and have done the subject scoping and improved his exam preparation. He has improved his grades so much more and regained his free time as well.
I feel a lot more confident, especially going into exams. My time management skills have improved. I have more free time. I mean, that's a really big thing. I have more free time to both do what I want to do, but also have time to, study efficiently. I would say take action. Don't think about it. It'll be one of the best decisions that you've made in terms of your academics.
Now on to secret number 9, know exactly how you should be studying. So the next major study inefficiency that students have is not knowing exactly how they should be studying. Like I was hugely inefficient back in high school. Every single hour that I was putting in was essentially going to waste. That means that even if I put in 10 to 12 hours study each day, I was still only getting 1 or 2 hours effective work in terms of just retaining information inside my brain. Now a lot of times students waste a lot of efficiency because each time they sit down and study, even if they are not distracted, not procrastinating, they don't know exactly what they need to do in this exact hour. Then they would spend the first 15 minutes or half an hour pondering whether they should start learning all the material all over again or revisit that lecture last week that they think they have forgotten right now. All of this pondering then increases the friction of productive work and increases the chance that you will fall back to distraction and procrastination. Now the goal is to become crystal clear on what you need to do every single time you sit down and study, and I'll explain this using my brick wall analogy. For a particular topic or subject, there will be certain objectives or knowledge that you need to cover, like what we talked about in subject scoping. So the first time that you remember it, it's like building the solid brick wall in your memory. In an ideal world, you should learn lecture 1, then you should build on a solid brick wall, and onto lecture 2, another solid brick wall, and so on until lecture 10. You then walk into the exams and you can easily recall everything and achieve 100%. Now as students, we all know that this isn't the case. Now there is just one tiny flaw that changes this whole logic, and this flaw is that our memory decays over time. Now, day 1, we learn lecture 1. It might be a solid wall. Then in day 2, we learn lecture 2. But we've forgotten a little bit about lecture 1. Hence, this wall have decayed a little bit. Then it comes to day 3, and you don't understand fully this topic. So it's a moderate wall only to begin with. Then day 4, you might understand the topic very well, and it remains a very solid wall until day 10. This cycle goes on, and the bricks on your walls keep decaying if you don't come back to review it. The problem with most students, including myself back in high school, is that I study chronologically, meaning I study from lecture 1 to 10 top to bottom. Again, it feels like we're covering all bases, but when I reach these big holes in the walls, I don't spend enough time covering them because I allocate only maybe 1 hour to study this. But when I reach these solid walls, I know them so well, so I really don't need that much time to maintain this solid brick wall. The idea is to go back to these leaky areas to fix these. And to keep track of this, I use what I call a knowledge-based timetable. So before the semester starts and during the beginning of your semester, you should already have done your subject scoping, which you have covered in the previous section. Now this is done in the form of writing these defined learning objectives on the side or deriving your own if they don't provide you with these specific learning objectives. Then once you have your whole course scoped out on the side, for example here I'll list 1 to 10, you will need to go through each and every single one of these learning objectives on the list. Now you can do this according to your lecturer or teacher's pace, or even self-study everything if you feel that your teacher is going too slow. Now once you have 10 these lecturers or learn these new concepts for the day, make sure you close off everything, put away all your reference materials, and to test yourself by looking at these learning objectives. You're then able to grade yourself according to the traffic light system. Red meaning you don't know much about the subject, orange you know a moderate amount, and green you know the subject very well. As the day goes by, all you need to focus is turn all of this red knowledge orange and then all of this orange knowledge green. Then when exam time comes, when you're 2 to 4 weeks away from your big exams, it's time to sit down and test yourself on all the learning objectives and get a refreshed knowledge-based timetable. timetable, because some of your memory may have decayed. Now once you're able to achieve this, you have an objective view on which areas you're weakest in and where you need to focus your time in each and every single one of these study sessions. And when you're 1 week or a couple of days away from your exams, most of your knowledge now should be green. Then you can focus your efforts on simulating the exam conditions by doing your self-written practice exam questions or actual past exam questions to gauge what is actually covered in the exams. This is one of the single most efficient ways of studying, and it turns you into this productive machine when you have crystal clarity on exactly what you need to study. So you now know how you should exactly be studying, and you'll use each and every single hour of the study time efficiently. And when you incorporate all the study tips we talked about, dedicating only 2 to 3 hours per day, working on your knowledge-based timetable, turning all of this red knowledge to orange, then orange to green. When exam time comes, you know exactly most of your knowledge is already green. When everyone else is frantic, losing their head, you are able to remain in the state of calmness and serenity amidst of this supposed chaos. Now exams aren't meant to be stressful if the preparation is done well. I hope you can see why some students can be so efficient with their time and never break a sweat when exam time comes. They're either using this method subconsciously, or they're already using this but never telling you because they worry you will become a competition once you have learnt this study hack. So an actionable point is to get your subject scoping done as soon as possible. Find your learning objectives online or ask your teachers, lecturers, then set up your knowledge-based timetable as soon as possible using the example that we've talked about. I'm much like one of my students, Sarah, who have joined our full course, and she was able to take full advantage of this and realize the importance of knowledge-based timetable.
I think you should definitely join because whether you like it or not, there's definitely one thing that you're not doing as efficiently as you should. Maybe you know about active recall, but you don't know about the knowledge-based timetable. So I know a lot of students don't do that knowledge-based timetable at all. And I think that one single thing can really help when it comes towards exams. So you use your time wisely. I now know exactly what to do when I study.
So on to secret number 10, how to get better grades in less time without the stress. So I hope you can see after all of these study secrets, there isn't just one single profound hack that all of these top students are using. And these top students aren't necessarily born particularly smart either, but it's just a process of constantly optimizing and improving their study efficiency. And each of these 1% improvement of efficiency is 1% more free time they can squeeze out to enjoy the things that they like without feeling guilty. Now, as you can see from all my current student successes, studying smarter, not harder, is not a myth. And if you're able to combine all of the above tips and keep working, improving on all of these areas we talked about, you don't need another YouTube video or study guide. And you don't even need me any further to guide you. If you're a self-starter, that's all the information you need to get excellent grades in less time without the stress. And I hope you feel this is a great investment in yourself so far. But if you are a procrastinator, or you need me to handhold you further, because you know once you click off this video, you'll return to your old usual self and with your bad study habits. And you know these bad study habits will get you the same bad results, or your bad study habits are causing you to sacrifice all your social life, your sleep, and all your free time to get those good grades. Now, if you want personalized help from me and my team to help you escape your current endless cycle of frustration, simply click the link in the description to find out more.